Employment contract, as severance pay. Livert * The Social Christ by Mr. Victor G. Public Chamber, First Level. Of the Social Christ. Chapter XXXI Unemployment. It seems incredible that even at this point in time, and in the 20th century, there are still countries where workers are fired without receiving any payment. It is sad to see laid-off workers wandering the streets of many cities begging for alms. We have known fathers who, after being laid off, have even stolen to feed their children. Those have ended up in jail. We have known unfortunate female workers, mothers of families, who after exhausting the best years of their youth in some factory have been thrown out onto the street. Many of these unfortunate women have had to prostitute themselves so as not to let their children die of hunger. Candidates for the highest office make thousands of promises before reaching the top, and then laugh at the unfortunate. Many of them are even well-intentioned, but they can do nothing because they are mere puppets controlled by secret cliques of millionaires. It is precisely these secret cliques who elect and control them, for their own selfish purposes. From a Latin American country, its name unknown, the illustrious lawyer Dr. Rafael Romero Cortez kindly sent me a wonderful outline of severance pay as it exists in his country. Below we present said outline. Outline on the right to severance pay. The Substantive Labor Code in Chapter 7 of Title 8, gives a general rule in its Article 249 stipulates that every employer is obliged to pay his workers and the other persons indicated in this chapter, upon termination of the employment contract, as severance pay 1 month's salary for each year of service, and proportionally for fractions of a year. Article 250 establishes the circumstances under which the right to receive this benefit is lost. The general principle has exceptions, which are set forth in Article 251 of the same document and are limited to purely family-run businesses, temporary or casual workers, and artisans who, working personally in their establishment, do not employ more than 5 permanent workers who are not family members. Restricted severance pay. Article 252 of the Substantive Labor Code states in its first paragraph, domestic service workers, those employed by industrial companies with capital of less than 20,000 pesos, $20,000, and those employed by agricultural, livestock, and forestry companies with capital of less than 60,000 pesos, $60,000, are entitled to severance pay equivalent to 15 days' salary for each year of service and proportionally for fractions of a year. However, in all other cases, they are subject to the regulations governing this benefit. Paragraph 2 states that for the calculation of severance pay for domestic service workers, only the salary they receive in cash will be considered. Base salary for settlement. Article 253 states that the calculation of severance pay is based on the employee's last monthly salary. Salary increases made after the effective date of this code will only affect the calculation of severance pay during the 3 years prior to the date of each increase. Prohibition of partial payments. Article 254 prohibits employers from making partial payments of severance pay before the termination of the employment contract, except in cases expressly authorized, and if they do so they will lose the sums paid, without being able to recover what was paid. Workers called up for military service, Art 255 of the CST, are eligible for partial severance pay. This also applies, Art 256, to housing financing, provided certain requirements are met. Family property. Article 257 states that the dwelling acquired by the worker before or after the validity of this code with the severance pay in whole or in part, does not constitute, by that fact alone, an unseizable family patrimony. Death of the worker. Article 258 of the cited work states, the severance pay is transferable upon death in accordance with the rules of the Civil Code. It does not exclude the payment of the mandatory group life insurance, and when it is worth 5,000 pesos, $5,000, or less it will be paid directly, in accordance with the procedure established in Article 12. Conclusions. Severance pay is complete when 1 month's salary is paid for each year of service or proportionally for fractions of years served, restricted in industrial companies with capital of $20,000 pesos, livestock, agricultural, forestry companies with capital of $60,000 and domestic service employees who earn only 15 days per year or proportionally to the time served. Unemployment benefits are incurred when the employment contract ends, that is, when the employment relationship with the employer ends, and the worker stops working. Sometimes the contract may be in effect when the worker is unable to work and is then paid sickness benefits. A worker cannot be paid partial severance while still employed. Exceptions include when the worker is called up for military service, and also when they are going to build a house and are given a portion of their severance pay in advance for housing financing. The basis for the settlement is the last salary earned by the worker. The dwelling acquired by the worker as built with part of the severance pay does not constitute an unseizable family patrimony. Severance pay, like mandatory group life insurance, is cumulative and not incompatible, and is transferable upon death. All legal benefits are subject to a 3-year statute of limitations. This concludes this outline on severance pay in a Latin American country. We do not deny that this outline is of great value and can serve as inspiration to many legislators. Unfortunately, capitalists are not only cruel and ruthless, but also cunning enough to circumvent the law. Nowadays, in that distant country, workers no longer last in their jobs for more than 3 months. Employers lay off workers as soon as possible to avoid accumulating unemployment. They know that as time passes, unemployment increases. Therefore, workers no longer have a secure job in that country. The legislators forgot the cunning of the bosses. If the legislators had legally set the minimum contract time, this mockery of the law would have been impossible. We believe it would have been better to set 1 year as the minimum working time. We also find it absurd that a worker's home, built with part of their severance pay, can be seized. We believe that no worker should have their home seized, regardless of their debts. A worker's home is sacred. Furthermore, if the worker has a family, children, and other family members, it is criminal to seize their home and leave them and their family homeless. We believe that this labor code can inspire legislators wisely, but by correcting and perfecting it. It is extremely criminal to fire a worker without giving them a single penny. Currently in Latin America there are countries where poor workers have no social guarantees of any kind. It is necessary to understand that workers laid off from their jobs need to eat and live, and therefore it is urgent to give them enough money to support themselves while they find a new job. Communism is the result of cruelty and lack of humanity. It is axiomatic that the cruelty of capitalists produces communism. If we want to save ourselves from the communist threat, we must end cruelty. Firing workers without providing them with support is extremely criminal. Chapter XXXII The Latin American Christian Socialist Party. Many people may find it strange that the founding president of the Gnostic movement is now founding a political party. It is necessary to understand that we are on Earth and not on Mars or Venus. A vehicle for action is needed for the ideas of the social Christ. A vehicle for action is needed to spread the redemptive ideas of Latin American Christian socialism everywhere. There are authors who are not in favor of formulating. We are in favor of formulating because the human mind is in a state of decrepitude. Some authors believe it is better to teach how to think, not what to think about. We believe that the best way to think should be taught, but since the human mind is degenerate, we must tell it what to think about. Our Latin American Christian socialism teaches how to think and what to think about. Our Latin American Christian socialism formulates, because the human mind needs to be formulated. Our Latin American Christian Socialist Party is different from the European one because when studying man, it studies him in an integral way, not only in the economic, but also in the psychological, sociological, political, and spiritual. Society results from the relationship of the individual with other individuals. The type of individual relationships determines the type of society. Government is the result of society and government are an extension of the individual. If the individual is cruel, selfish, greedy, envious, ambitious, perverse, society will be that and the government will be that. We are in a global crisis, we are currently living through the most difficult time in history. The individual has created this chaos, the individual is the world. If the individual does not change internally, the world will not change. The Latin American Christian Socialist Party aims to teach the individual the path of the social Christ. It is necessary for the individual to change, and the Latin American Christian Socialist Party teaches the individual a doctrine whose result will be change. Thinking, feeling, and acting are vital in these times of global crisis. Only right thinking, right feeling, and right action can bring about radical change in the individual. Men of goodwill should not have formulas, but as the human mind is in decrepitude, it needs formulas to organize itself. Men of goodwill do not need to belong to any political party, but the mind is degenerate and therefore a party is needed to transform the world. There is confusion right now, and we need to break free from it. We need to liberate ourselves from this confusion in order to change individually. We need leaders because we are still not capable of leading ourselves. The current chaos demands new types of leaders because old-style leaders are outdated. If man had a spontaneous, ductile, elastic, creative, beautiful mind, he would not need defined formulas, but since the human mind is degenerate, he needs defined formulas to orient himself. We need to march together, we need to unite fraternally to make a better world. Intellectuals have totally failed, we need to learn to think for ourselves independently. Intellectuals have led the world to chaos and anarchy. Man does not live by bread alone, we also live by psychological factors which, when properly understood, can completely transform our lives. We need to fully understand all the complexities we carry within us if we truly want to change completely. There is no doubt that the world is in the midst of a great social catastrophe. We need a new revolutionary way of thinking, only in this way will it be possible to embark on the path to a new order. The whole world is in a catastrophic state and we need to study all the problems in depth. We need to consider man as a whole, psychologically, politically, spiritually, economically, etc., etc., etc. The Latin American Christian Socialist Party sees the whole picture and not just a part of it. The mistake economists make is wanting to solve the world's problems solely with economic science. The mistake politicians make is wanting to politicize everything, and so on. Our party studies all problems in a comprehensive way. Our party wisely addresses the world problem as a whole and in all its details. Our party teaches a new way of approaching things, a new way of feeling, a new way of doing things. The Latin American Christian Socialist Party is the social action vehicle of the Gnostic movement. The Latin American Christian Socialist Party will transform America and then transform the world. All active members of the universal Christian Gnostic movement must walk the path of the social Christ. The party must be organized in all Latin American countries. The word of the social Christ must be taken to all unions, factories, workers' centers, workshops, railways, fields, etc., etc., etc. We must preach the word of the social Christ and form new groups everywhere. The party must be organized in every country of Latin America. Men of goodwill must launch themselves into the struggle for the social Christ. The world is in crisis and men of goodwill are needed to bring the word of the social Christ to poor, suffering humanity. It is urgent that the Gnostic movement rise up to fight for the social Christ. Chapter XXXIII The Rights of Man. Human rights are very sacred and the state is called upon to recognize them. Heads of family. Many parents find their income insufficient to fully meet their family's basic needs. The causes of this misfortune are numerous. Illiteracy, disease, lack of technical skills, poor coping abilities, and so on, result in hunger, daughters forced into prostitution, banditry, begging, and many other social ills that are subsequently exploited by international communism for propaganda purposes. It is now perfectly clear that the poisonous flower of communist doctrine sprouts in the mire of poverty. The heads of families in distress could very well organize mutual aid societies, where everyone would help each other. These societies would lobby the governments of the land to obtain social assistance, better paying jobs, and so on. There is strength in numbers. Protection of families in distress. The state must help families in distress, those facing prosecution, arrest, exile, or conviction. When a head of household falls from grace, the family suffers the consequences. Every family in distress needs immediate social assistance. No family in distress should be left without support. The family is not responsible for the crimes of its head, and therefore the state is obligated to protect it. Only in this way can we prevent daughters from becoming prostitutes and mothers from begging in the streets, etc. When the state shrugs its shoulders, when it says, "That doesn't concern me," it is in fact fertilizing the ground, preparing it for the disgusting flower of communist doctrine to sprout. Sick people who cannot work. Sick people who cannot work need to be assisted and protected by the state. It is completely absurd to leave these people in total abandonment. These people worked and became ill. The state must give these people a pension so that they can live. We must remember that these people are human beings, beings with physical bodies that eat and drink, that feel the cold of nakedness, etc., etc., etc. The communist experiment was simply the cruel and appalling fatal result of our lack of charity and love for our neighbor. When the state shrugs its shoulders at problems, the plague of communism comes. Seniors. The elderly have a right to an old age pension because they should not and cannot work. Only financially secure elderly people can live without state assistance, but it is right that poor elderly people be protected by the state. It is not humane for the elderly to be forced to beg in the streets. They too are human beings with the right to live, and it is cruel and heartless to abandon them. It is also wrong to lock up poor elderly people in nursing homes as if they had committed a crime. It is right to give poor elderly people a home to live in. They have a right to food, clothing, and shelter. It is a crime to allow the elderly to succumb to misery. The fatal result of all these social calamities is the plague of communism. We need to eliminate cruelty from our minds and work very intensely on the realization of the social Christ. Latin American Christian socialism, great and powerful, does not need doctrines and revolutions of blood and liquor. By solving vital problems according to our religious principles without distinction of creed, caste, or religion, we realize the social Christ on the face of the earth. It does not matter what name we give to Christ, be it Vishnu, Krishna, Osiris, Ormus, Fuji, Balder, Quetzalcoatl, etc., etc., etc. Christ is the center of all religions and we need to realize him socially on the face of the earth. Our Christian socialism may well also be called Buddhist, Muslim, Hindu, etc., etc., etc. The name doesn't matter. What is important is to know that our socialism is legitimate, authentic democracy, based on the religious principles of Christ, Buddha, Fuji, Confucius, Hermes, Zoroaster, etc., etc., etc. Prophets throughout history worshipped Christ and taught his principles that we need to put into practice socially. Our socialism is profoundly religious. Only the religious man is truly revolutionary. Atheistic socialism is not revolutionary. Atheistic socialism is reactionary and conservative. Working for human rights, we create the social Christ. In a well-fed and progressive society, the poisonous flower of communism cannot germinate. The middle path leads us to true peace and legitimate happiness. No far-right or far-left party can bring us happiness. Extremist and totalitarian governments completely violate human rights. In the Soviet paradise, human rights no longer exist. Every totalitarian system tends to enslave man, to force him to think automatically in accordance with the masters of power. Children are forced to learn false doctrines and principles in public schools. In the USSR, children are taken from their parents to educate them according to the absurd theories of the state. Thus, human rights are violated in the Soviet paradise. Freedom of the press, freedom of expression, does not exist in totalitarian governments. We want freedom of the press, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, so that everyone can say what they want and belong to the religion they choose. We don't want to belong to a totalitarian machine, we want to be truly free. We love human rights and we fight for them. In the Soviet paradise, every human being is an automatic prey of the state machine, where there is no individual initiative. Human intelligence atrophies. We love individual initiative and fruitful and creative work because this is one of the rights of man. In totalitarian systems of the extreme right or extreme left, it is a crime to think and express our thoughts when they contradict the theories upheld by the state. We defend the human right to think and say what we feel because any violation of this right is a crime against humanity.